Hello and welcome to the Unofficial Controller Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast, episode 155, PSVR2 review. Is it worth it? With me, George. I don't even know my name. I've spent that long in VR, Seb. With me, George, and as always this week, joined by Seb. PSVR2 to my is it worth it? Is it worth it? Stick your flan down, flip it, and reverse it. Seb, how's it going this week? What have you been up to?
It's going pretty well, but about the same old. As the great Pinky and the Brain once said, I'm just trying to take over the world.
Oh, wow. Okay. Slowly but surely.
Yeah, for sure.
One incremental step at a time. Well, let's not waste any more of this noise. Let's get stuck straight into... We'll save what I've been playing for the middle of the show because it makes sense. I might dance around a little bit of Hogwarts Legacy, but more importantly, Odders, grip that wheel. As I said, what have you been playing?
Man, I've been playing a little more of Hogwarts Legacy, and then I've also been playing some Atomic Heart. So I've been bouncing back between those two. And the crazy thing is like, those kind of have mirror, like, I guess you could say mirror hype for me at this moment, because like Atomic Heart is a mid game. It feels very bland in a lot of different ways. And I sort of feel that with like the later parts of Hogwarts Legacy, to where like nothing kind of stands out anymore. Everything feels like a retread of everything I've already done. Like as the game goes on, it almost feels like tires that are kind of worn thin. And it feels like the more you play it, the more it feels like it lacks true substance, you know, like
Agreed.
Whereas like a lot of games crescendo and like get bigger and bigger and like build on everything that you've learned so far. This game kind of feels like it's starting to fall apart and kind of like die down a bit. And Atomic Heart starts like that. So I'm like,
oh wow. Let me talk to you a moment about, obviously we're going to talk about PSVR in the show, but you know, I've been playing around with Hogwarts Legacy as well. Now it's remote play into a PS4, and I was doing a section that was actually really enjoyable. It was the Deathly Hallows section where everything's drawn in a pencil style. I presume you've done, you know, initially I really enjoyed this, but then you get into now this is the difference. For me, it was streaming smoothly, button inputs work and everything like that. And I got through to a section where it's a fight section where you seem to fight an endless stream of trolls and these shadowy wizard characters. Now, on remote play, I thought I was doing well, and I don't normally use Wiggenwell potions that often. In this one, I just couldn't get past it, and I was so frustrated. When I actually got home and played it on straight PS5, I danced straight through it, no issues. I think I used one Wiggenwell because it got a little bit dicey towards the end. I thought, I'm not dying here. But after that, walked straight through. Now, that was one of the more interesting and graphically fascinating sections of the game. But I completely agree with you. You get past the midway point in that game, and presumably I am at this point because I've got all the Seekers up on the wall and all that good stuff. But it feels a bit... You really start to notice the emptiness. And I felt like that Deathly Hallows section was just enough to pick me up. But once I got back into the real world, I was like, oh, I want to finish this game, I do, but momentum is starting to tail off. And the desire to continue with it is starting to wane. And it's a shame because the initial burst of excitement and play was enough to take me to this point, but it's a bit mid.
Yeah, to coin my phrase there, it is one of those things to where it feels more mid the more you play it. And you know, I can't help but to think every time I play Hogwarts Legacy, I pick it up, I'm like, it almost feels like it's almost a chore at this point. And it's not like I'm not enjoying the game, because I do, but at the same point too, I'm like, if anything came out, like anything that I was remotely interested in, I feel like it would pull me away from this game with a vengeance. I'm talking about like like Batman to a villain just pull me away and yank me up into the nether regions of Gotham to where like I would probably never see this game again. It's yeah, it is that kind of intensity there. It's like I don't know what that game could have been. It could have been like imagine if Star Wars Jedi Survivor came out like tomorrow. Like I probably wouldn't go back to Hogwarts Legacy, but like with the huge gap that we kind of have, the sizable gap in between like major release titles, I'm like I can finish this. I kind of feel entitled to finish this now, you know?
Yeah, same. I want to see how it ends. I want to see, what the end game of all this is. I think at this point it needs just to hurry up and fast forward through this last chapter just so it can leave with some modicum of respect and decorum.
I wish there was characters I cared about too, man. Like outside of Sebastian and maybe his story, I don't care about any of the main quests.
I do not care about any of the other people that have been forced upon you as friends. I'm very uninterested in pursuing any missions with them, even though the game does force you at times to try and make you care about these characters. The young lass and her mum that have come from I presume the African wizard school who do the magic without wands. Could have been an interesting backstory and one that should have been fascinating. And I don't know whether it was the acting or the writing. Let's give them some credence and say maybe it was the writing. But I should have wanted to, have a friendship with this person, but I just wasn't interested. The Sebastian storyline with the sister and the uncle and the curse and all of that sort of stuff is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the most interesting side story to the game because it's got meat and it's got weight. But really, just a not very well veiled way of teaching you the deadly curses.
That's it. That's all it is. And, Sebastian is an interesting character. Ominous isn't, though. Ominous is kind of bland as like watching paint dry. So I'm like, they're two like sides of the same coin that's just installed into the game of just teaching you the deadly curses or like the unforgivable curses, so to speak. And I'm like, it feels like there's so much more that they could have done with this game. And if like, I don't know, maybe another year of development cycle and maybe like some more Harry Potter fans as far as like writing this game probably could have helped it. But
I think it would have been interesting as well for signposted miles away, someone from Slytherin is going to teach you the unforgivables or the deadly curses. It's like, it's a bit on the nose, guys, if I'm honest. Wouldn't it be more interesting if one of your
professors did it?
Yeah, or a student that you don't see coming, like is all nicey nice, is Gryffindor, and then they're the ones who teach you about this room, and they're the ones that teach you about all the intrigue, and they're from an old wizarding family. All right, they got sorted into Gryffindor, but what does that mean? Come down into the Undercroft, and I'm going to almost let my mask slip a little bit, and I'm going to teach you the unforgivables, and then your story with Sebastian could have just been the story with Sebastian, and I think that would have been more interesting.
Oh yeah, could you imagine if it was like a Weasley descendant that was teaching you the unforgivable curses? So interesting.
That would have been a...
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you like video games, podcasts, and reminiscing? I'm actor, video game writer, and total sweetie pie Connor Savage McCabe, and on each episode of Call Me By Your Game, I sit down with a guest for an intimate look at a special game from their past. Did you and your dad beat Spyro the Dragon over the holidays? Or was Halo 4 the one thing that united your roommates during your senior year of college? Stories like these are what Call Me By Your Game is about. From video game content creator Janet Garcia to Hades voice actor Courtney Vinay's, I interview wonderful comedians and game industry friends about these memories. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe someday you'll call me by your game.
They're all right to name drop the characters, but they can't play with our preconceptions of what, even though it's like 100 years before.
Yeah.
Why can't they mess with our preconceptions a little bit?
I mean, yeah, it's like, it's also one of the things to where like it's almost human to do that because there's almost quote unquote a bad apple in every family to where like even the Weasleys probably have had like bad descendants throughout their name. Like we have a main character or like a a main antagonist that was like the descendant of one of the what was it, the founders, the keepers, and like completely different than what his ancestor was. His ancestor was this noble keeper, and like himself is like a scumbag who's like the lowest of the low. And spoiler alert for Harry Potter if you haven't watched it or read it, but like Rookwood and all his descendants, like Rookwood is one of Voldemort's like key supporters, like going forward. So I'm like, it's easy to tell that story, or to where like, or tell that tale of like how like ancestors and descendants deviate from ideologies. And I think that's an interesting and fascinating story. Whereas this kind of just played it straight laced. Oh, Slytherin, dark and like unforgivable curses. Let's just go that route. And I'm like, come on, man, be original.
We could have been surprised, but unfortunately, so far for me, it's been a little bit formulaic, which is a shame. Anything else you've been playing a note?
No, I mean, I tried Atomic Heart. I wanted to give it a real try. As a fan of like Wolfenstein and that like formula, I'm like, I feel like the story is there. It's just like some of the gameplay elements are a little bland. Some of the main characters are very forgettable and everything like that. But if you do like Wolfenstein, y'all probably should at least give it a try to see if this game kind of sticks with you. But it is almost to me like a very 5 to 6 out of 10 kind of game right from the outset. So, that's
a shame, because some of the imagery from that game looks really cool.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, like, it feels like if BioShock and Wolfenstein had a baby, but like it just feels like the polish one there. It's like in aspects, like it looks good visually, but like it almost feels like a AA game as opposed to like a big AAA kind of experience. And
the thing is, I can imagine Wolfenstein and Atomic Heart's baby, Wolfenstein and BioShock's baby, but I can't imagine the conception of said baby.
Yeah, those are very different genres in a way, but like it's like the weirdness that you get with BioShock, that weird almost like steampunk kind of world, and then Wolfenstein is that alternate history kind of like setting that you see.
My take on it would be, obviously we've got like this perversion of 1950s America in the non-dystopian future version of Fallout, which has always fascinated me. When you see the concept drawings and ideas that scientists in the 50s thought how we would be living now, I think they always did a really good job of it. And I see Atomic Heart as almost like the Russian version of that. This is what the world would have been like if we'd have continued with this sort of ideology and technology. And I always find these alternate takes quite interesting, but is that potential wasted in what's basically a shooter and a physics manipulation game?
Yeah, I mean, I think your mileage is going to vary with this. If you're like a history buff who really likes alternate history to see like what could have been, or like that almost like that what is the Twilight Zone-esque kind of like narratives there, then I think you will like the narrative. And as far as the gameplay goes, like the game is good enough to where I'm like, if you like that narrative, you can probably get through this campaign. But if you're not into that BioShock type gameplay to where like you're kind of manipulating things with like alternate powers, that Wolfenstein kind of like shooting mechanic or anything like that, and if you need like a strong main character to really carry that narrative, this game ain't it. But I mean, if you're on PlayStation, I'd say wait for a deep sale. If you're on Xbox, I'd say just try it because it's on Game Pass.
Okay, nothing to lose with the Games Pass scenario, though, so that's nice.
No.
Okay. Well, with that all said and done, and with me holding out for the main section of the show, it's time for the news to scour the very darkest region of the internet to bring you the latest stories. First up, who sees the future? Maybe Xbox can. Microsoft's continued attempts to push its Activision Blizzard acquisition through are resulting in quite a few 10-year deals being struck by the company. Xbox has agreed such deals with both Nintendo and Nvidia, with Sony still refusing to sign a same-length deal thus far. Naturally, that leads to the question about what comes after those 10 years. Questions put forward to Microsoft President Brad Smith at a recent press briefing when asked about whether any 10-year Call of Duty deals might be renewed after that length of time. Smith made some interesting comments. Thanks to Games Radar for this little nugget. He says there may be someone else standing here in 2033. Now, none of us can actually predict what exactly will be the form factor that is most prevalent in a game in a decade from now. Will consoles still play the role they play, whether it be phones, it all be in some metaverse, something or other? Who knows? The company's vagueness is perhaps unsurprising here. They likely want the focus to be on the next 10 years while Xbox continues to press on with its acquisition-related concessions. Even so, this sentiment does go against what Phil Spencer himself said just a few years back. Back in 2020, the Xbox boss said, "I don't think Series X is our last console," also claiming that Microsoft will do more consoles to make that great television play experience work and be delightful. Whether traditional console gaming will come to an end as we know it has truly been a much debated topic for years. And even now in 2023, folks still don't truly know how things will shake out. For now, we'll continue to enjoy our Xbox Series X and S on our shiny 4K TVs. Thank you very much, Xbox. Seb, I think we've danced around this subject numerous times over the past few weeks. And to hear sort of Xbox say such things, I mean, there's a few things to pick out there. The 10-year deal with Nintendo on Call of Duty, and from what I've read from other sources, other Xbox-centric titles, makes me wonder, again, going back to a conversation we had last week, what planet are we on where Xbox think that they're going to bring an all-singing, all-dancing version of Call of Duty to the Switch?
Yeah, no one's gonna play that. No one's gonna play that. And the crazy thing is like, I think the pinnacle of what that could be would be the cloud version, because like the Switch does have cloud games to where like I think Hitman comes to mind, to where you can still play a lot of the Hitman games via the cloud, but like I don't think anyone likes those experiences. I, for one, found those to be lagging experiences, especially with like the Switch's janky internet connection. It's like that. None of that seems like it's a feasible way to play a game.
I have to give them props for trying, but the very idea of the Switch is it's a mobile console. So if I'm in the back of Mumsy's car on a day trip to the local rodeo, and I want to play the latest Call of Duty on the Nintendo hardware, as soon as I get off the drive and the Wi-Fi signal drops, this game's done.
Yeah, I think it is. And, like, I know they said that this probably won't be a depowered version of, if it is like a true port over to the Switch. And I know they said that it probably won't. It'll be the real version, but everyone feels and knows that it's probably going to be a lesser version of Call of Duty, in some way, somehow, some facet. Even if even if it's probably going to run on like 10-year-old graphics at this point, where you reduce everything down, it's going to be a lesser version. I think the big news out of this story is that Nvidia signed on. Nvidia signing on makes me feel like Sony's now they're not trying to win the battle. They're just trying to see how much they can get out of losing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone else is like signed on at this point. It's just like, and I feel like Sony probably knows, hey, like this thing is going to go through, but like how much can we actually get before we actually concede with all this? So, whether it be a 10-year deal or maybe like, hey, we're Sony, we're going to hold out until you give us 20 years or maybe 15 years. But I think I think this is a bargaining tactic at this point.
Gamers are fickle, and we don't see changes coming when they're right under our noses. I feel like signing a 10-year deal on what is kind of now, it's the top shooter, but it's getting more lukewarm by the year. I know that's probably going to upset some listeners, but I don't really feel like it's the hype train it once was. And 10 years from now?
No, I'm right there with you. I've always said, to me, like, I think Call of Duty feels like an athlete, to where they're now in their prime, but they're starting to like exit their prime a little bit. Mm-hmm. It feels kind of like that. But, I think one of the things is like, and we've learned this with the recent like state of plays and the recent shutdowns of games as a service, is like these companies have a hard time predicting trends. And like games as a service was like something that was really like, for the last 6 years, a lot of studios went and switched to that model. Like, and Call of Duty right now is a sure thing. Like it's a sure thing. They know if it's not the highest selling one in 10 years, it'll probably still be in the top 10 is what they're probably anticipating. And that feels like a gamble worth fighting for rather than, like saying, oh, okay, Call of Duty's waning. We probably need to hop off that train entirely. And then, Sony right now doesn't seem to have a plan of what they'll do as far as like their first party in-house shooter. Like that'll be their realistic shooter right now. So I think they're just negotiating to keep that on the plate and such, and maybe try to see if, what kind of other deals they can get as far as like concessions that are outside of Call of Duty. Because I do think they're probably like bargaining for maybe like not only Call of Duty not being exclusive, but maybe Crash Bandicoot or maybe different things like that. So I think they're just trying to win as much as they can in a losing effort.
I see Nintendo doing well out of this. I mean, imagine if they got like a physical release of like Master Chief Collection or something like that, which technically, feasibly would run reasonably well on the Switch. There's these little nuggets of games. If I was Nintendo and that deal got put under my nose, I'd be like, I've got nothing to lose. Grab me a pen, Phil. I'll sign it today. What do I have to bring to the party? Nothing. What are you bringing to the party? Card and everything else? Yeah, I'll sign that.
I think Nintendo is winning in this, but I also feel like Xbox is one step closer to that ecosystem that Xbox wants. Because if Nintendo signs on to this and Nvidia signs on to this, that is one step closer to Xbox getting that goal of like Game Pass being on the Nintendo Switch, and Game Pass being on the NVIDIA streaming service. And I think that's what they want, is like that Game Pass access on both of those platforms.
Question before we go any further: obviously a lot of these news stories coming out, the state of play and other things along those lines. Obviously, the next bit of news. What did you think about the state of play?
I thought it was mid for me as who I am as a gamer, but I do think people are a little harsh on it, and I think they're looking at it in the same lens of like, hey, something got shadow dropped for Nintendo's Direct and Xbox's dev conference. Like both of those games got like, whether it be Hi-Fi Rush or whether it be Metroid Prime, we got a game shadow dropped, and I think a lot of people had their expectations that we were going to get something of that vein. Maybe even if it was something like Tachia, which looks like a fun, almost like Zelda-esque kind of game that's coming out, but it is still coming out, on the extra and the platinum tier, with no cost if you're a subscriber to those models. So I don't think it was a bad show. I do think there was some room for improvement, and I do think like that Naruto announcement, the Naruto, I can't remember the game, but like it absolutely killed the pacing of that show because it was a brisk pace. There was a lot of announcements where some of the announcements may or may not have been for you, but like that pace was on point until it got to that point, and then it just petered off. It just died.
I was a bit disappointed that they decided it's the week of PSVR2. Okay. At this point, the hype's about as real as it could get, and we might discuss how high or low that hype might be. But they then showcased 3 games that, if you blinked, could have thought was one. They all look the same. They all smelt the same. Let's put humanity to one side for a moment. Whatever that ends up being. But the other 3 games they showcased were all exactly the same. Basically, VR shooters. And when we get into the review a little bit more, there are things that lend themselves to VR and there are things that don't. And some of those shooters with a fast-paced, frenetic action, I just sat there thinking, okay, well, maybe the next VR title is going to be something that, blows me away. It's going to be transformative, something that I didn't see on PSVR 1 as an example. And no, it's the same. Oh, and Green Hell, it's a shooter kind of thing, same. Yeah. The Portal shooting game, sort of similar, it's the same. And I thought, wow, what a
missed opportunity.
Yeah, really. Mm-hmm. Considering the early adopters are probably feeling a little bit sort of light in the pocket, at least give them something heavy to go over in their dreams that nighttime. But they didn't. And for me, Is it endemic of Sony walking away from a piece of hardware seconds into its lifetime already? Probably so. The third party will carry it, and if they don't, then we'll kill it.
Yeah, it feels like that. But, I almost don't look at what this does for early adopters. I know you're in that vein because you have a VR. I almost look at it on the other side of the lens of like, what does this do to people who are on the fence about VR? Does it make them want to jump in, or does it make them does it validate that reason of like, hey, I don't need this piece of hardware right now? And nothing they did in that showcase validated or at least changed their mind on like whether or not they need a PlayStation VR at this point. Like, imagine if like at that showcase they dropped the bomb that Half-Life Alyx was coming to VR2. That for a lot of people was going to be a system seller because it's right now crowned the best VR game at this point in time.
I understand the logic of Half-Life Alyx being a system seller, but I sometimes wonder, like now, if that technology moves quickly, and in the VR space, it moves even quicker than that. But on flat screen gaming, things move at a real clip.
Mm-hmm.
Half-Life Alyx was amazing when it was announced and played, but since then, quite a few games have incorporated some of the nuances of that. So would it feel that amazing if you were playing it today? I don't know. If it had launched day and date and it was only coming out today and it was one of the only places you could experience and play it, yeah, I can see it being a system seller. But now people have gone that long without it, and so many other games have done similar things now that I just wonder if it's still got that momentum.
We have a saying in marketing: it's IPs drive everything forward. And other games have probably done a lot of things that Half-Life Alyx has done ever since it came out, but like there's no other game that has an IP in the VR space like Half-Life Alyx. It's like it's the IP right now for that brand. Like there's no other. Batman VR had its time in the shot. It had its time in the sun to where it was like one of the more premium VR experiences.
Really
Iron Man
was.
VR, and then like Half-Life Alyx came, and it's the first 10 out of 10 across the board. Everyone loves it kind of VR experience. To not have that on your PlayStation VR2 seems like a very huge missed opportunity. Whereas like no other game on the VR scope has any sort of IP juice to where like the average Joe Smo on the street would know about it,
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's why don't you give us this next bit of news, Seb?
All right. Before I do, I want to congratulate you. Right now, you are winning the fantasy league, and you're winning by 5 whole points. You got 21 points. Deb's Babs right now with 16 points. Bobby's Devils with 19 points, and I have -3 points. Right now, I'm in dead last with -3. But for you listeners who might be worried about old Seb's like tally from the -3, I've only had one game that's come out. So like,
what have I had that's come out? Call of the Mountain and what?
Yeah, you have had Horizon Call of the Mountain and Like a Dragon Ishin, which both got 81 and 80 across the board. So I'm like, you got 11 points.
You never lose the league if you draw every game, Seb. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. And, the crazy thing is like the reason why I'm in negatives right now is because like I counterpicked Hogwarts Legacy because I was just like, I'm going to take a gamble. I'm going to take a gamble. I was just like, a lot of the criticisms that we were talking about, I kind of saw in the trailer to where I'm like, oh, I think like game reviewers are going to see that as like a fun but shallow experience. And I'm like, no, y'all didn't review this sucker like that. Y'all reviewed this sucker in that lens of like,
I tell you why, because I guarantee you the press kit was that full of good stuff and no doubt some complimentary tickets in America to the Harry Potter theme park or in the UK, the Wizarding experience. I just feel like they probably smothered them in merch.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to where I'm like, man, if y'all reviewed that like the 7 out of 10 it was, I would probably just be like, oh, I'd be very much still at 0, but at least I wouldn't be in the negatives. But I got a lot of bangers coming out. Resident Evil 4 is about to come out. That's going to change everything. That game's going to review gangbusters. It's the nostalgia thing.
I know it's the nostalgia thing, but something about what I saw the other day with that, I was thinking to myself, oh, that ought to look better than that.
I'm right there with you. I don't think this looks like a 10 out of 10 kind of video game. But again, I didn't play the first one. I didn't play the original Resident Evil 4. And none of the Resident Evil remakes are under like I think 85 on like OpenCritic right now. All of them always score higher than that. So I'm like, this is supposed to be like the Anakin of the series. This is the chosen one. Like, this is the one everyone raves about, you know? Like, so I'm like, this to me seems like an easy 9.
I tell you what, they should be raving about Code Veronica. They should be redoing Code Veronica with the Resi 2 and 3 remake engine, because that game went under so many people's noses. Is actually a really strong game, and I think they could quickly knock up. There's me, They're just knock it up, boys, and it probably takes a sweatshop of 1,000 asset artists creating these things. But at the end of the day, you want to give someone a game that they may never have played and may never have the chance to play. Because I think PS2 got a version, and obviously it launched on Dreamcast, but I do believe they're about the only 2 places you could play it. And I think, it probably did a gangbuster number of games on the PS2. I shouldn't think it sold, although it was probably one of Dreamcast's big sellers. that doesn't make it a sales success in any way. So when it got to release the X version on PS2, you do see a lot of that game in thrift stores, charity shops, flea markets, in actual independent gaming stores. You can always find a copy of it, which to me suggests it was produced in big numbers and therefore sold in big numbers. But still, for the modern gamer who've maybe been woken up to Resi a little bit more, you've got to wonder, they've never played it. Whereas I'm sure every opportunity to play for in its standard version got a port to PlayStation 4. So lots of people have had a chance to play it. Give them something new. Give them Veronica. Resi 4 obsession, I kind of get it, but there were so many cows to milk before you got to the others of 4. And God wonders if they're going to remake 5 and 6, because you've got to please no.
Yeah, I bet they're going to remake 5 and 6. It's the only ones missing at this point. It would feel like it'd be weird if they were like, hey, this didn't review well, so we're not going to remake it. They're going to probably remake that, slap it in the RE engine, and go about their business, whether or not it sells or not. Because like at this point, you've done every other iteration at this point. You might as well just finish out everything. And this is an opportunity, I think, to redo that. If you redo that story of that game, I think a lot of people might, like actually come around to like playing it. You like, based on good faith alone of what you've done with like 7, 8, and then 1 through 4 at this point, a lot of people are just going to jump on that.
I'm also a little bit shocked that Resident Evil 0, the prequel, which is a great game and did the GameCube a great service, you can get that on PlayStation 3, and I think it's part of a pack. Why haven't they done that yet? Because that's still in the old engine. They haven't even remade 1, the original, the OG, in the RE engine. That could have been so sexy.
They like Resident Evil 8 might be like the exception here, but like they've mostly been fixated on remakes. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go back and remake a lot of their collection at this point. It's like between that and like that team can just focus on remakes, because Monster Hunter is just going to bring in like all the new games and all the new money for them. So they have like a 2-headed beast over there, where like there's a remake and a remaster studio, and then it's the Monster Hunter team. So I'm like, Capcom's doing well with both of those. And then, I think they'll probably do something like a Devil May Cry adaptation. They always usually throw those out there every once in a while. So yeah,
we haven't really had a revisit of those since the HD collection on PlayStation 3. Maybe it was on 360 as well, but that's a series. If they remade that with, I don't know whether it was the RE engine that they used for Devil May Cry 5, but if they remade the first ones with that in, I think it would just be sublime. But there you go. What do I know? Next bit of news, Seb.
The next bit of news. All right. We give you something, you give us something. Xbox may be struggling to deal with Sony over Microsoft Activision Blizzard's deal, but it doesn't seem to be stopping other agreements going ahead between the two gaming rivals. During this past week's State of Play live stream, Sony announced that Xbox's Minecraft Dungeons is coming to PlayStation Plus's library next month. Such a deal might not seem quite as monumental as one relating to Call of Duty, but still, Phil Spencer seemed pretty happy that it managed to go ahead. The Xbox boss has taken to Twitter to express his excitement about bringing the Minecraft spinoff to even more players across different devices and services, no less. This is Big Daddy Phil Spencer saying, always excited. Always
that needs to be his Twitter handle, if I'm honest.
I think so too. Either that or Uncle Phil, like the Fresh Prince. But always exciting to see more people get to experience great games like Minecraft Dungeons. Of course, this is rather timely PS Plus edition. Xbox is continuing to make its case to various regulators over the ActiBliz deal, a case that is largely built around Xbox bringing its games to more platforms, whether those platforms are owned by Microsoft or not. Xbox is certainly trying to help its acquisition case with deals like this, along with the company's recent Nintendo and Nvidia agreements. Let's see if it all pays off for Xbox.
Now, was this a strategy move, or was it just fortunate timing for all parties involved?
Yeah, no, I thought about whether or not it was a strategy move, and as the show Succession has taught us, everything is a strategy move. But I've also come to after doing some hardcore investigating journalism here, I've come to the realization that all Minecraft games are on every single platform, regardless of anything else. So it almost just seems traditional. Like when I heard about this news, I was just like, it's Minecraft. Of course, it's going to be on every platform.
Mojang were allowed to have an autonomy as part of their absorption into the Microsoft animal that said that they could strike deals on their games as and when and where they chose.
Yeah,
a deal that's probably done them some mega bank to this point, but it's another thing that can be weaponized in the Activision Blizzard deal, I think, and it does prove a point that Xbox are not really bothered about the platform. If I didn't think behind the scenes that in a way they were trying to stick it to Sony, which, even in Xbox's admission, and Sony probably won't admit this, individual gaming, Sony's gaming individual area, PlayStation, and Microsoft's individual gaming area, Xbox aside, I think that obviously at the moment, Sony are winning that traditional fight with footfall and consoles sold and a number of games played and hours lodged on services, etc., etc. But it feels like a battle that's being won on a gaming battlefield that's slowly being exited by most people, and even PlayStation themselves to a sense with the Premium Plus memberships and other bits and bobs.
The world is changing.
The world is changing. And at the moment, let's say this might be the last bastion of the traditional battleground. Sony are winning. But when you buy your next smart TV and it's got the Xbox app and you were maybe on the fence about console gaming, but you hadn't had a console since you're about 19 and all you got to do is click and give someone £10 a month and all of a sudden you're playing Halo with the boys like back in the day. And you got to wonder if it's not a bad strategy. We know that cloud gaming for the most part isn't fantastic at the moment, but if you're a casual and sign up and get an Xbox controller in the post for your sins and everything's made super easy for you, do you need a console? Admittedly, we talked a few weeks ago about how that experience might end up being a 720p experience, depending on your internet connection, but would you even care?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I love cloud gaming. I'm not even gonna lie. I was one of those people who are like, bah humbug. I would never get into this. Try that out. It's I have fast internet connection here deep in the heart of Texas, and I love it. It's I get to play a game on Xbox Game Pass via cloud gaming. I can try that thing out. I don't have to waste my time downloading that thing, and it's 1080p while I'm like trying things out. And if I want to get it into higher fidelity with a like a higher fidelity or a higher visual quality, then I can download it and then play it like that. But for the most part, it feels. You remember that feeling of playing a PlayStation 4 game to where like it feels still like, hey, I'm playing something that's a premium experience for the time. Like this feels like playing a PlayStation 4 game, but with that SSD kind of factor, because like you're still playing the cloud version, which is like always the biggest and best version. So yeah, it feels like that. It feels like it feels like I'm playing a PS4 version visually, but like gameplay wise, it feels like I'm playing the highest version possible because of like the quick load times. So I think, I think this is just the natural progression of things. I don't think console gaming is going to go away, by the way. I think Xbox is still going to manufacture consoles. I just don't think they're going to care about manufacturing consoles. I think that's the difference.
I think we've spoken about this, and I think the only sort of line down I can draw is you have people that listen to music on their phone. Okay. Well done. That's great. It's, to most people, it sounds the same. Then you have people that collect and play vinyl who want that really high end feeling. They go and buy. Initially, they might get in with a cheap turntable, but then if they get deeper into the hobby, they're going to get a nicer turntable. They're going to get a better amp. They're going to get a better. And it's that high fidelity situation that the tech sort of almost get lost in the weeds of the geekiness of it, that maybe in 10 years' time, you'll buy a console because you want that. Everyone else is playing it at 1080p streamed on the TV. Can't really tell any difference. But if you're a nerd, you're going to go for the turntable. You're going to go for the amp, and that will be your console at home experience. You're playing it raw on the TV. It needs to be distinctly better for that to be a worthwhile investment of your money. But there's room for both to exist, even in 10 years' time in a boutique kind of way. I don't know whether you'd still be buying physical games at that point, but Amazon don't have a warehouse for nothing. I'm sure that there's, and you don't have a shelf for nothing. You're going to put something on it, aren't you? And if you're a game collector, then you're going to put games on there. I think it would be the time of the special edition sets where you get a little bit of something in the case just to make it feel like a worthwhile thing to do. But would cloud gaming be an acceptable experience? I've had up and down with cloud gaming. To be honest, sometimes when it works flawlessly, like, do I need a console? But then when it starts to lag and it gets a bit janky and you see the big blocks appear in the corner because it's kind of loading through in a weird way, like, well, this could be better.
Yeah, I think that's the nail on the head right there. It could be better, but that's for us hardcore gamers, because like, we think of like, hey, that experience could be better, but for everyone else, it's good enough. Like that's the moniker there. Good
that's
enough.
My argument with the Switch. A lot of people complain. I mean, we've had our moment in the Sun on the show saying how the Switch is left behind. It's XYZ years old. When it launched, it was behind all the consoles it launched with at the time. But do you know what? The thing is, it's good enough. And with cloud support, I ask you this again. Do Ninty need to bother?
No, I mean, they're behind on cloud though too. It's like if you play their games on cloud, it always feels like you're walking through mud. Whereas it's like you can play a game that's like the Master Chief Collection on Xbox, and it still feels that same way that you intend to play on console. It just looks worse. Like it's almost to that bottlenecking point to where I'm like, you need some. It feels like it's like. At this point, it's like it doesn't feel like a modern day console anymore, and that I think that's where you kind of get into that fact of where like, hey, we want more premium experiences from Nintendo, but like it's hard to make any of those experiences feel premium when you're stuck on that Switch. And I think it's like good enough is good for the third parties. It's good for like the indie games. Like good enough is good for the Harvestellas of the world. And no shade to Harvestella, but it's not the premium Switch title,
like,
no, it's not,
Okay.
RGT might be ready to throw in the pitchforks and everything about that sort of phrase, but it's not the premium Switch title though. I mean, but like if you get Mario Odyssey 2, if you get like Tears of the Kingdom, if you get all those games, you kind of want to play it in the best possible state possible. And I think that same thing will be said for a lot of people with the modern day consoles of like they want to play it in the best way possible.
Okay, well, let's slip and slide out the news of this final news article. You feeling this? Bit of parenthesis. I have had no issues whatsoever, but a huge number of PSVR2 early adopters are having issues with their PSVR2 Sense controllers, with a massive thread on Reddit outlining the issue in a meticulous detail. We haven't been able to replicate ourselves, but the post has over 700 upvotes at time of typing and is filled with disgruntled fans who are unable to get the right motion controller specifically to register in games. This seems like a software bug as opposed to a hardware issue because many are saying the controllers connect and pair successfully with the PS5 console and even work in the main menu, but then fail to register in-game. One of the suggested remedies included turning the controller on and off, but some also recommend resetting the affected pad using a pin. Sony has yet to comment on the issue, but it seems enough people are having the problem for this to be considered widespread. We'll contact the company to see if it has a solution in the works. I very much doubt they'll answer me, but in the meantime, do let us know if you're having this issue in our Discord and be sure to share any solutions you may have discovered. Despite my best efforts, despite my very best efforts, Seb, I have had no issues with the Sense controllers at all. We will get into it in the review coming up shortly, but the one thing I would say about VR2 for me is that everything has just worked flawlessly. And for me, that's the biggest takeaway from PSVR 1 to PSVR 2. PSVR 1, even when it was working perfectly, you didn't feel like it was working exactly perfectly. It was kind of like, oh, you know what, virtual reality, it's fine. But now we have something to compare it to. The one lead plug and play, all of that, the setup process. Again, I'm stealing content from our own selves. At least Dick Turpin did us a favor of wearing a mask when he robbed somebody. I'm not even doing that, and I'm robbing myself. So I don't even know what's going on there. Seb, how big an issue is this? Have you heard of anyone else struggling with the PSVR 2 Sense controllers?
Yeah, I've heard of this, and it's a big issue, but it's not like end of the world. Nintendo had this same kind of issue with the Joy-Con, if you remember correctly, where like they had Joy-Con connectivity issues, and they managed to, I think, put out a system patch, and next thing you know, a lot of people weren't complaining about it anymore. It happens. I'm like, this is the price you pay for being an early adopter to things.
One thing that doesn't make any sense to me is it affects some people, but not others. It works in the menu, but not in the game. Something about this doesn't seem right to me. I would recommend everyone resetting them with a pin. I'd also recommend charging the controllers. Because when they come, I unboxed it all, put the headset on, VR Sense, set it all up. I was like, this is amazing, flawless out of the box, great. Boo! Once it was set up, boom! Not enough charging the controllers, must charge. Like, hang on. What? I barely used it for 10 seconds. And it immediately spat me out and said, you can't play anything right now, pal, because there's not enough charge in the controller. So I had enough charge to set the system up, but I didn't have enough charge to play a game.
Yeah.
And I wonder if a lot of these people tore into it, didn't get the pop-up, but the right-hand Sense controller was running very low on power. And maybe some of these issues have spiraled from that. I'm no expert, and I'm sure, the Reddit thread goes on and on and on. And then when you click the subtopics, and then all of a sudden there's another load of comments about people experiencing it in a different way and having a different problem. It's hard to pick out from the 700 upvotes and comments what is actually happening. It's a very strange set of circumstances, I have to admit, but I'm sure it'll all get solved in the wash. Community corrections, I haven't seen any, so one would imagine flawless victory. But Seb, let me ask this question. If someone's listening and they have an opinion or a take on the news that we missed, maybe I just totally misread the whole Minecraft dungeon scenario and we missed a massive open goal. If they did have an opinion or take on the news, how would they interact with us and let us know that I know nothing about PSVR 2 and in fact have been wearing a plastic milk bottle with my iPhone slotted in it for the last week.
People, the answer, the stereotypical answer we always give is you can DM us on Instagram and Twitter at the Unofficial Controller Podcast, or you can send your questions to the unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com at questions@theunofficialpodcast.com. But forget all about that. Go to the Discord. We want you to go to the Discord, and then from there, you can just hit us up on a personal level. You can just type in whatever questions you have. You can call me a mook. You can call George a two-faced cretin who doesn't know what he's talking about on VR.
Squid.
Yeah, squid. Yeah, you can do you just be kind a little bit, but you can reach out to us personally on the Unofficial Controller Discord, and you can see that you can just hang out with me. I can tell you about indie games recommendations. You can hang out with the crew where they can tell you about all sorts of wild and wacky fun things. You can have arguments of whether or not the Last of Us TV show is good, or whether or not it's straying from what you think it should be showing. You can talk about all things and everything video games. So my question to you, listener, is what are you waiting for? Join us at the Unofficial Controller Podcast Discord.
We're assembling an army, almost like the Avengers verse. And if you want to be one of the named heroes right at the front, you need to get in the Discord, because no one ever remembers unnamed Soldier B, do they? Let's face it.
Yeah.
Get in the Discord, get yourself a decent username, and come join the fight. It's the UCP Rebellion, baby.
Hurry up before you're Hawkeye in this scenario.
Or worse.
Weasel.
Rocket Raccoon's underarm deodorant.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, if I don't see a username pop up in the next week with that,
missed opportunity, everyone.
The show's cancelled, literally. A veiled, vaguely unsuitable threat, no doubt. But anyway, meeting the veg, you came here because Sony released the PSVR2.
Topic of the show. Let's go.
And you're wondering, is it worth it? Well, sadly, it's complicated. Well, let's start off with the headset. Now, one of the questions posed was by you, Seb. How does it feel comfortable? How does it feel from a comfort perspective versus the PSVR 1? I would say more comfortable, most definitely. It's definitely got some nice. I had the PSVR 1 Edition 1 without the HDR pass-through and without the inbuilt headphones. Now, one of the things I like about the PSVR 2 is the two rubbered sections that you pin the headphones into when you're not using it. The quality of life adjustments they've made are very good. Is it night and day? No, probably not. More like dusk till evening. But certainly changes have been made and they are good. Having experienced PSVR 1 to its very best, I would say at the moment PSVR 2, one of the other questions I saw on the Discord is, what's the software library like? Well, the software library is large, but if you had a PSVR 1, you've probably had some of these experiences. The Sense controllers, they are game-changing compared to the Move ones, but it's probably what was expected, arriving at PSVR 1 with the Move controllers already a generation old. By the time PSVR 1 was towards the end of its life, I would say that the ones probably weren't fit for service, but the new Sense controllers with a haptic feedback, and I can probably speak more for this when we get into some of the games that I've played as to why I think they're game-changing in the headset. But the headset's rumble function, certainly, if used subtly, add a great level of immersion to the game. But unfortunately, when new things come out, the idea of using subtlety is out the window, and it's all about shaking your head to the point where you're nearly sick and letting you know that we've got rumble in the headset, by the way. You better be enjoying it. The process of plugging it in with the one wire versus the breakout box, because my PSVR 1 version 1 didn't have HDR pass-through, setting the system up every time was a real ball ache of getting all the wires out, ferreted around the back of the TV like Wayne Ray looking for a sweet you stuck there 2 years ago, and generally getting yourself wrapped up in knots, and that's before you've even got the headset out. So in this case, one wire straight in the front of the PS5, boom, it's working. Now, as with all VR headsets, my experience really, the most experience I've got is with a PSVR 1. Setting it up does take a little bit of adjustment while it's off the face to make sure that the screen is as clear as possible before tying it up on the back of the head and bringing the screen in. They've also got the adjustable focus wheel, which is game changing, because before you had to look at the camera and it took pictures of your eyes and it kind of worked out the spacing, but it wasn't precise. Whereas now you can flick up an activity card or during the initial setup and you can work to adjust that setting till it's perfect. And that really produces a very clean and sharp image. You do still get PSVR 1 was guilty of, in dark sections, having lots of micro dots on the screen, so there weren't any true blacks. And that does exist in the PSVR 2, although it is diminished. Like I say, the haptics in the controllers and the interaction of your virtual self in the 3D realm has been transformed with the Sense controllers, and also the in-out tracking means that I don't need to be facing the screen. I don't need to be worried whether the Move controllers are within sight of the camera. This thing just works. And that'll be my takeaway versus PSVR 1. This thing literally just works. But if you've had a PSVR 1, I wouldn't call this PSVR 2. I would call it more PSVR Pro. That's my first shot across the bows here. Some of the hyperbole that I saw, or hyperbole as we call it on the show, on the build-up to PSVR 2 was indistinguishable from real life. I need to refine that quote and shoot the person who wrote it, because if this is how you see the world, you either need some serious prescription glasses or medication, because you still have the creep in on the peripheral vision of the rubber. I hope that would have been widened slightly. The viewpoint is wider, don't get me wrong. And if you're focusing forward and using the foveated render and eye tracking, which again works reasonably well. The headset as a whole, though, I think it is a win. To steal thunder from our own show, Seb, the question at the top of the show is PSVR 2, is it worth it? Unless you've got disposable income coming up the yin yang right now, I would say quite brutally no.
How much is it in the UK?
It's about $540. If you go for the Horizon Call of the Mountain pack, it's about $560.
Okay.
In
the States it's $500. Yeah. So I was just kind of curious.
Is it worth that? It would be hard for me to recommend it now based on the library of games that I've got, and for the most part I've played extensively. But to really sell a system, there's no doubt the technical prowess is definitely there in the headset for it to sing going forward into the future. But should you be a day one adopter? Probably not. They're going to need to show me an awful lot more to keep me engaged. Saying that, okay, I'm going to rock the boat a little here. The game, the headset launched with Horizon Call of the Mountain, made for a cool box. It certainly worked for the brand recognition of existing Sony ecosystem players, and maybe people on the periphery. They know Horizon because the artwork, the font, the characters, the lore, the robo dinos. It's a big ticket item. I mean, if they've slapped that in VR, it's got to be good. Well, initially, I didn't think so. For me, initially...
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Initially, the system seller. I joked a couple of weeks ago about downloading Kayak VR for £16 because it was one of the cheaper VR experiences available, and I wanted something new to play. Let me tell you now, Kayak VR, if I'm going to throw numbers around willy-nilly, I would give that game a 9. I would give it a 10 out of 10, but I think it's egregious. I would give it a 9 out of 10 for a VR experience. They've gone away and found an experience where it's natural, right, and proper for you to sit and not move around apart from other than in the virtual world. What I would love to encourage VR developers to do is to find more experiences like that. You sit down on the carpet with your Sense controllers, and it's a graphical world, don't get me wrong. If you're a seasoned gamer, you're going to see things that tell you this is not indistinguishable from real life, but in a stylized way, they are giving it a really, really good shot. The game drops you off, first of all, in a swimming pool with a beach ball and a pink flamingo inflatable. to muck around with. Now, initially, I sat in this world and looked around. Now, if PSVR 1 gave us PS3 VR style graphics, then PSVR 2 definitely gives us PS4 style graphics in a virtual reality world. As soon as I sat down in this game and looked around, I thought to myself, they've nailed this. The foveated rendering there working in the swimming pool really, really well. The eye tracking that works with the foveated rendering working really, really well as well. But the interactions with the water, with the paddle, the thing that sold me most of all is while I was hashing around this swimming pool and gleefully smiling to myself as I hit the ball, two things sold me on it. I sauntered up behind the beach ball and whacked it with my paddle. The thing is, the virtual reality paddle matched up 100% in my mind with the position of the ball, the position of the paddle, the contact and the slight haptic feedback from that, and then the ball not only moving in 3D space as I expected it to with a realistic physics simulation, but the sound of the ball being hit and then skipping across the water tracked perfectly in 3D through the headphones to the point where it felt like a real world object. And the only way for you to experience that would be to put the headset on and give it a go yourself, because that tie-in of the 3D audio and that tie-in of that object moving through 3D positional space exactly as you would expect it to really sold me on it. I was like, wow. And I raced up the pool and did it again. The other thing that blew me away was I got a little bit close to the side of the swimming pool and I reached out with my virtual reality paddle. And not only did it make contact with the pool side exactly as I thought it would do, but the haptics felt like a toughened plastic riding against the swimming pool side. And as I pushed my kayak away, the boat reacted in such a realistic manner and moved me exactly as my mind expected to, the distance I had pushed. It was at that moment my brain said, listen, I give in. You're in a pool in a kayak right now, pal. And although I knew I was rooted to the spot, now later in the game, or from that point, you can choose. One thing I would say about Kayak VR is I wish they would let me just enjoy the swimming pool, but you have the words press X to start floating in front of you whenever you're trying to enjoy the pool. Slightly frustrating, but, you know, it's a minor niggle. The other levels that you can go to, varying degrees of success, but certainly pull you in. As soon as you get some momentum on the surface of the water, like the sea or the river, the virtual reality headset uses a very, very subtle haptic in the headset to simulate the up and down of the water itself. So subtle, but certainly pulls you into the world. And it's that more subtle use of the haptic feedback that I think sells the not only the environment, but the experience far better. When the headset or the controller shake to the maximum amount, you hear it vibrate a little bit and you're like, I wish this was more subtle. But Kayak VR, from the Antarctic wastelands to the, one of my favorites is the Australian Canyon, which you just meander through. I leant back in my virtual kayak, and although I knew that I was in a cold room in a rather old English home, I felt the virtual reality, my brain felt the virtual reality high noon sun, Australian sun, actually warm my face. And it was at this point I was like, oh, mate, what are you doing? And at other times, it got me. And at other times when I was up and down on the waves, I literally felt what I felt was my brain saying, you just felt your backside move in the kayak. It's like, no. No. So in a way, indistinguishable from reality is a bit of a stretch, but I kind of see where they're going with it. Now, before we wade into Call of the Mountain, some of the other games I tried were I got the demo for Star Wars Galaxy Edge. It's a fun and interesting game. It's very much a virtual reality version of a Star Wars ride, but for the most part, it was presented well. Everything was solid. Everything had weight and feel and heft to it in there. And, apart from the odd cameo of the Millennium Falcon and other bits and bobs, I would say that's, is it worth the $39.99 point of entry? Probably not, but get the demo if you're into Star Wars. It's probably worth picking up. I probably will eventually. The gunplay in that didn't feel very great, but it was a demo. So I don't know whether there's some advancements you can make to the weapons to bring the precision in. And as always with VR, you go to put something in your inventory and it falls on the floor, and then you have to bend down, sort of wallow around on the floor before you realize that you can't pick up what's on the floor. Not necessarily. You got to go back to the table it was initially on to put it back in your inventory. It's these small niggles that I think exist across all VR games, and it's just getting used to it. GT7.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What's a niggle? Is that like a nitpick?
A very small nitpick. Yeah, niggle.
Okay.
An issue.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absorb it into your vocabulary. It's pretty good. It's small niggles. That's a UK word for a small nitpick or issue. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
GT7. Once it installed, I did have a few dalliances with the music jukebox mode. It's quite a fun little section of GT7. I thought this would give me a good idea. Again, what you're looking at close up in the car, very high detail, 4K. If you stare at the speedo, you can see the screws that hold it together. There's no faulting that. You look outside the car, this is the flat screen version. It feels like the textures drop off a little bit. That might just be me, but I personally feel like they do. So for all intents, another great showcase of the setup, don't get me wrong, but it did leave me feeling a little bit shortchanged. But playing through that whole game with numerous cars and all that sort of stuff, it is a rewarding experience. No Man's Sky, once again, doing a solid carry for PSVR 1 and 2. That game is really what you probably, if you're a true gamer, you want a AAA experience that can suck you in for hours. Now, I spent hundreds of hours in No Man's Sky in PSVR 1 with the rather ineffectual move ones and still had a great time. Looking forward to playing the PSVR VR2 version. Unfortunately for someone who spent hundreds of hours in No Man's Sky, I can report back that it's the best way to play on a PlayStation console, VR, No Man's Sky. I mean, that was a no-brainer coming in, but the experience is great. But for me, it was a little bit, oh, damn, here we go again. I've had that many starts and restarts and playthroughs of No Man's Sky that it was a bit of a shame that I didn't save No Man's Sky all those years ago for this very moment, in which case I'd have been blown away. But unfortunately, I've kind of seen it before. Now,
no cross progression.
There could have been if I'd wanted to, but I wanted to start.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
A new save. Let's go for this. Let's have it fresh. Let's see, because obviously there's the new Fractals update and all that other stuff. And I just thought, let's go into this fresh and see what it feels like for a day one gamer. Unfortunately, I couldn't forget all the time I'd spent in No Man's Sky to this point, so I couldn't effectively do a day one gamer review. But I think if you'd never experienced PSVR before and you'd never experienced No Man's Sky before to any depth, I think that would blow you away. The haptics, not only in the sense controllers, but in the headset, was a really great addition to the experience and made it enjoyable. The elephant in the room right now is Call of the Mountain. Should have been the AAA system seller. In fact, a £16 kayak game is the system seller, in my opinion. And if you're going to buy one of these in a relatively short period of time, if you don't pick it up with Kayak VR, you need your head inspected. In fact, God damn it, you need a lobotomy.
Oof.
Horizon Call of the Mountain, I would say I'm a reasonable fan of the Horizon franchise. I felt like that initial boat ride was a very much, you've got your new headset and we're going to shake every bell and whistle in the first 30 seconds to make you realize that you do own a PSVR 2. If the rather large black hole-like hole in your bank account wasn't enough proof, you're going to get your head shaken to the point where it nearly falls off when a Tornet comes through. Now, this might be a gripe, and I know, I've read in some reviews where this is like a Disney version of a franchise where it's been boiled down to the most simplistic parts. But as soon as I saw the Tornet crashing through the jungle, my brain went like this. Why would it be crashing through the jungle like that? Because Tornets walk a set path and stay on that path. So how's this crashing through this jungle for the first time? It's surely been walking this path for the last 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. I'll let it go. Let it go, George. Let it go. Let it go. Enjoy the experience. And it took a little while. Initially, the game wants you to walk around the world by waggling your arms up and down and walking on the spot. That does not work. I found myself a little like a foot short of a climbing area and then had to sort of mince my arms up and down to move me that little bit forward till I could grab hold. And that put me off. I was like, this is meant to be a next level interactive experience. I'm not really feeling that. When I switched to the traditional stick controls, I started to get on board with it.
Okay.
The climbing is an interesting part of the game. It does take up a lot of the part of the game, and I'm going to put it out there right now. I still have yet to complete the game. Kayak was more of an experience. I can speak very soundly on that, and I would say I'm about 3 to 4 hours, technically a third to halfway through what Horizon Call of the Mountain has to offer. You do a lot of climbing, which involves your face being literally centimeters away from the rock face. So why use such a low poly texture for the rock face that you're literally centimeters away from and spend most of your climb looking at?
I got a follow-up question.
Yes.
So on Horizon, it gave you the capability of playing both with the PSVR2 controller and or the DualSense controller, or do you have to play with the PSVR2 controller?
It wasn't an option for me. I didn't see it come up to use DualSense, so I have been using the VR Sense controllers for the whole experience. Now, for the most part, for the hand tracking, little subtle bits like your life being displayed on your glove, really nice. But I just can't believe that the people who made that game thought, okay, we'll do a rock climbing game. For the most part, that works or it doesn't work. But it does form the bulk of the game. Certainly cresting a peak after a long climb, you feel like, yeah, do you know what? Great. But the views. Now, Horizon's got a certain art style. It's not photorealistic by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't try to be, for the most part. It tries to tell its story through its visual style. It is a realistic-ish visual style, but it certainly has nuances that suggest it has adopted a graphical art style. When you stood on one of these mountains, you look at the junglistic trees below you. In Horizon Forbidden West or in Zero Dawn, you can see that tree and go down to it and then walk around it in immense detail. And you see it and you appreciate it and all that sort of stuff. Maybe you can't get close enough to see the textures fall away as you do in VR, but certainly for the most part, it looks very, very, very high end. When I was on top of one of the peaks in Call of the Mountain, I looked down at the jungle. Now, again, I have to give my head a wobble because I thought maybe I'm getting this wrong. And I reread some of the other reviews about the game, and it said, the vistas are amazing. Some vistas are amazing. But in the early part of the game, I was atop a peak and looked down at a jungle. And the jungle looked like it had been rendered in Uncharted 1 on PS3. And I thought to myself, is this the views? Because if this is the views, I'm a bit confused. And then seconds later, I atop another peak, and there's a big, massive, old world robot wrapped around a mountain in the distance, and you think that does look phenomenal. But that jungle and that water below me feels very PSVR 1 to me. And
you're also coming off of like Horizon Forbidden West, where you were like, oh, Horizon Forbidden West may be like arguably one of the most gorgeous games on the PS5 at this point,
Yeah. With the added, recently playing that on Pro, it's the little nuances that 5 does with the, I can't remember, the atmospherics, the sort of small particle effects it does above the blight and other things that kind of really push that really quite further down the road of being a next-gen game.
Yeah, it has the ambiance to it.
In VR, and you know what? I met Aloy. One of my biggest takeaways, and in canon, she's 5'6". When you meet a 5'6" person in VR, it felt like I was talking to a child dressed as Aloy, almost Wayne Ray. It was, it was nice to see her. Don't get me wrong, and it was nice to get an appreciation. But then when you realise how small Aloy is, and then in VR how large some of these, even the very small creatures like the Watchers, who are billed as like almost the cannon fodder for the Horizon universe. When you see how big they are in real life, you're like, wow. And Aloy takes these down with a couple of slaps around the face.
Don't forget her bow and arrows.
Of course, I'm sorry. She must be in peak physical condition, this girl. Although she's still very slight of build, she's not exactly got shoulders for days, even though she spends hours climbing. And even in a virtual reality world, I spent hours climbing and felt like I had shoulders for days. I'll tell you that now.
Someone made the comment that like Aloy and Abby should just swap places in their respective games, and it'd make a lot more sense in their both worlds that they live in. Like Abby from The Last of Us 2, because she is jacked.
She is jacked, and she could literally climb this mountain. All that aside, it's a bit of fun, don't get me wrong. And, there are times where I'm having a good experience. The climbing was given a little bit of elevation when you start getting tools. There's some picks you get relatively early on that you have to build. Again, some of that feels a bit too gimmicky. There was nothing about Kayak that felt gimmicky. Whereas Call of the Mountain, if you're a PSVR user from the PS4 and you've played Blood and Truth, I really don't think there's anything in Call of the Mountain that would blow you away. Blood and Truth did climbing interactions in the game. There was a lot of climbing. There was a lot of shooting from being in the hung climbing position. And it felt like Blood and Truth kind of nailed that interaction a little bit better. Call of the Mountain, it's not a bad game by any stretch, but it's certainly not one I would have chosen to be my system seller. I think I'd have chosen to give that a little bit more polish and pushed it further back in the launch window and said, come back at me in maybe 3 months' time and just keep working on some of those finer aspects that we've nailed down in the play testing and other bits. Because I can't be the only person that said this. Give me a 9 out of 10. Give me a Half-Life Alex beat from PlayStation Studios. One would imagine before this had happened, it could have been a reasonably high expectation for them to pull off. They didn't. But, to summarize, PSVR2, is it worth it? If it had launched at PSVR 1 price, which I know would be impossible because of the pack-in sense controllers, and don't forget the egregious move that the PSVR 1 launched without any packed-in controllers in certain situations, led to you having to obtain the Move 1 second hand. And all of a sudden, as soon as PSVR came out, Move 1s went from being $1 in a thrift store to being $69.99 used, even in the most reputable outlets. Left me questioning what the hell was going on. So, plus you needed the camera, which was another barrier to entry that wasn't packed into the box. So you needed to get the PSVR headset, you needed to get the 2 Move 1s, and you needed to get yourself a camera. All of a sudden, the price of PSVR started to bump, especially to early adopters. PSVR 2 gives you everything you need straight in the box. Inside-out tracking, remarkable. I actually quite like the ability to flick from in-game to a rendering of your actual real world, so you can pick up the controllers or grab your phone or do whatever. It's in black and white, but it's quite spooky. If they could use that to generate a replication of your in real life world and then have things pop out in an augmented reality way, like your TV all of a sudden just melt.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
I also thought that we're missing a trick with VR. We're not playing to its strengths. We're trying to take AAA gaming flat screen experiences like Horizon and then force them into the virtual reality world. I think we need to divorce ourselves from traditional flat screen gaming techniques and things we're used to and give us things like Kayak. Now, I did wonder, if you're listening, developers, and you want to steal this idea, feel free. Just mention UCP in the credits. Tell people what a great podcast it is, and you can have this for free. But I did think that we know that the PSVR 2 can map out a play space, and most headsets can. It'd be great if they were able to process from within your play space, you sort of walking down a tight corridor that maybe meandered round in a way that only a video game could, in an impossible way, to have you walking around your room in a room scale way, but then also start putting a small closet in, it comes up, it's almost like a horror experience. Turn round and there's a door to a small room, a tiny room, maybe 2 foot by 2 foot within the play space, but it's rendered perfectly and you can walk around and interact with it. You leave through another door and you have to kind of shimmy down these wet, dank corridors to the next room. To me, that kind of And you could almost be kept on a loop of doing round and round and round your room. You feel like you're getting into these rooms in different orientations, but ultimately it's exactly the same every time. The game keeps you hemmed into your play space, but lets you experience room after room after room by navigating you round your own room while still giving you that feeling of walking in virtual reality. Because the up and down movement of the arms for locomotion, Seb, feels like the biggest gimmick ever going. And I want more room scale VR, if I'm being honest. I think that would lend itself to this setup much better. But it's going to take someone with incredibly better coding techniques and understanding of the system to really weak it out. To that end, one of the other questions we had in the Discord.
Hold on, before you go on, I want to say, like, it feels like the wrong person is almost developing that, because from what you're describing that you want, like a lot of that, it just seems like a slightly more advanced version of Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. You know, the Mario Kart like thing where it renders your room and puts it in the game and such like that. Imagine that concept with a VR headset on, and you're kind of getting closer to what you're describing.
Yeah, and that would be another good take on it.
Yeah.
One of the questions on the Discord, Ginge asked me if he can have my PSVR2 when I'm done with it. At this rate, it's not really a giveaway, Ginge. I feel like I'm going to have to store this away for some time to get my money's worth out of it. And definitely, as we said at the top of the show, the state of play didn't reward me as a PSVR2 early adopter with anything on the horizon that looked like a system seller. That saying, I've said it once and I'll say it again. If you're thinking of picking one of these up, get Kayak. Do yourself a big favor. Get Kayak. It shouldn't be as good as it is, but for $16, it's certainly punching well above its weight. With that all said and done, I probably ought to switch to you, Seb, for a bit of a Q&A session on this headset.
All right. So first question, what games would you like to see in VR as far as like from first party Sony?
That's a tough one because in Kayak VR, sorry to go back to it, but there's a level where you're in a storm off the coast of Norway. And I was paddling along and the lightning was coming down, and I actually felt quite scared because the swell is heavy and it's intimidating, and you can't move as fast, and you through the haptics you kind of get this. And as I was doing it, I was like, imagine if there was a VR game where you kind of just staged an escape and ran down on a beach and jumped in a kayak and started paddling forward. And the games are a little bit more savvy, because at the minute it feels like health and safety is holding them back. You either stand or you sit. There's no transition between the two. Why can't I tell it that my chair's there and it lets me sit in my chair and then stand when I need to? So the experiences I'd like to see, that's really difficult, because again, I don't feel like the AAA existing franchises probably are going to translate very well. Horizon being a great example. When they put the effort into making a new one, Blood and Truth, it works flawlessly. Would I like to see a Blood and Truth 2? Yeah, I would. But other than that, you know, Astrobot is a great example. It would be a hard push for it to be a system seller, but it's certainly a great experience on PSVR 1. To that extent, games like Moss lend themselves quite well. Just something new. Just come up with something where I'm sat. Be it a tank driving game where I spend my time in the tank talking to my crew members, and you do a real Red Dead Redemption mode of making them really in-depth characters where I get to know them across a whole of a World War II experience. You know, you live your life with them, where you're sat, you can't get out the tank, and you're going into your next battle and you're talking to them. Anything that removes that sort of thing in your mind that says you're in virtual reality and pulls you into it, I think would be where VR needs to go. I think at the moment, trying to replicate flat screen games is a big miss.
You know, the crazy thing is like, I hinted about this a little earlier. It's like, I feel like Sony isn't the right person to lead the VR charge, and it's nothing against Sony. And like I love everything they're doing. And ironically, I've been a little hard on Nintendo for the last couple of weeks for like a lot of the pricing debacle and all that kind of stuff. But like they seem like the prime people who would lead the VR charge because like a lot of their games would translate, like Mario Kart, like just putting you behind a cart and letting you like throw out different items. Match made in heaven. Star Fox, like the dogfightness of like their first party lineup of you playing a Starfights game seems like it go 1-1. When you go to PlayStation's portfolio and library, though, you might get Sackboy and you got Astrobot, and outside of that, everything kind of feels almost like two like larger than life cinematic 1v1 games to where like it doesn't quite fit in that VR headspace. So at this point, I don't know what the perfect VR game is. And that's the reason why I asked, because I thought maybe you might have some insight. Because, like, I look at that and I'm like, people are going to say, like, okay, well, first party can't do it, third party will do it. Where I've spoken to third party developers and they said, like, VR is one of the hardest things to develop because, like, it's one of the most expensive things to develop for, even though the graphics aren't quite up to par. It's like there's so much testing that goes on. There's so much like different nuances that make that experience more
and there's nowhere to hide in VR.
No,
in a flat screen game, what's not directly behind you at times doesn't even need to be rendered. Let's face it. So you're saving so much asset there. In VR, everything needs to be rendered all of the time. You can't mid-production, you can't leave that doorway that's invisible in a flat screen game, or that room that just exists floating in the space that the character can't ever see because the camera's locked, to a VR one where you look around and like, what's that? It'd stick out like a sore thumb. And this is why, it takes a lot to develop for. It takes a long time to develop for. And probably, thing is, if we look at PSVR1 as a track record, we got Astrobot. We got Blood and Truth. We got Iron Man. Iron Man was an absolute mess, by the way. I thought that was a complete car crash. If I was to review that game, I don't know. I'd struggle to give it a 5, if I'm being honest.
I think we're missing the premier, what I would probably consider, and what most people would probably consider, like the high tier VR experiences are probably Resident Evil at this point. Like
now
Resident
that's
Evil
something
7.
that I was thinking of giving a go this weekend because I've played a lot of RE7
Biohazard
in VR, and it was an interesting experience, but it was held back by the controller input. It was held back by very weird controls that left you feeling sick a lot of the time. Now, I played that initially and I had VR legs, but it bit me on the backside. It almost felt like playing Resi 1. It was the tank controls again, and it stopped your freedom of movement in the game. Now, that could have been game breaking for them, so which is why they sort of said, no, you have to interact with the game in this way or not at all. But it stopped you feeling like you could reach out and grab that item. It stopped you feeling like you could stop somebody. When you're holding the controller, you immediately know that you're playing a flat screen game in a VR way. All of a sudden your head is the right stick and you're moving it around. Like that's all that was. There was some really great moments like the meal and, him busting through the wall that were high points in the early days, and I'm looking forward to giving RE7 a go with the RE8 a go with the update to see what changes have been made, because it's fully playable with the Sense controllers. Maybe I'll be on next week saying, what was I doing not playing 8 straight out the gates?
I wonder if that's going to be like the premier experience, because like right now I feel like we're waiting for that big like that big shoe to drop, that big like tentpole experience, and I have a feeling it's going to be Astrobot. I have a feeling Asobi Studios is coming out with a new Astrobot game, and that'll be
if they wanted us to have it the takeaway that 8 was the launch game, the game that everyone should play in the experience. We should have seen more gameplay. We should have seen more like advertisements about it. Yeah, and what's that game? A year old at this point, maybe longer. Very kind of them to release a VR update free of charge, by the way. Thank you very much. But it seems a bit of a strange thing to champion. Gran Turismo 7, at this point, almost exactly a year old. VR update. Yeah, great, very generous, free of charge. Thank you very much. Works well, apart from the texture issues that I talked about. And some of the menus, obviously, it flicks to flat screen cinema mode and then back to 3D when you're in the car. Could you have not come up with a more of a virtual reality way of transitioning these menus, guys?
Yeah,
really? You've had a year for this?
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I'm like, you could see where Sony's priorities lie. You could see where PlayStation's priorities lie. This is an add-on experience, and they're treating it as an add-on kind of experience. Like everything feels like it's an add-on to the games you already are experiencing, versus this is a native device that has its own hardware that you need to support, that you need to like really show out for. Because I'm like, if you don't show up for it, who is going to show up for it? So I do want to ask you a question though, before we get critical on like the landscape of VR. Did you have your DualSense headphone or your Pulse Sense headphones on while playing in VR?
No, I wanted to give it the biggest chance possible with the original tech, and for that reason, I used the inbuilt headphones.
Okay,
and I thought that they were perfectly serviceable. There were a couple of moments where you felt them pressing in your ear, and Sony do supply like a different set of rubber pods, but the ones that are on it are like the average size ones. And for the most part, I even slapped my mum in it. Mumsy put the headset on, went in kayak, and Mum's not a big tech woman. She was involved in IT, teaching IT and other bits and bobs, so she's not, unfamiliar with technology, but she's not, donning an Oculus Quest every night and flying around in No Man's Sky or anything like that. So sitting her down, a complete newbie, and putting a headset on her, she was blown away. And I think sometimes as gamers, we have that critical eye. We see computer graphics every day, all day, and we see very high-end ones on flat screen. And I think that kind of probably ruins the illusion a little bit. Equally so, put my kids in it. Kayak was the standout for them as well. Put the girlfriend in it. She thought that, Kayak again was a standout. Was impressed with some of the other games, but really, as I say, for a £16 game, Kayak is the system seller. And I kind of wish Sony had done something more like this. I mean, they kind of did with Gran Turismo, but is it new? It's hard to say. So, and over the weekend, I will be getting the sim rig out. The full force-pack steering wheel, sitting down in it and giving the cars a good go. One thing I did notice with Gran Turismo, and my son was the first one to sort of highlight it to me, I sat down in a game and locked myself in Gran Turismo and drove it pretty much with my body locked off. My son was lurching around in the car, and as soon as you pop outside of a certain sphere of the game that they think you should exist in within the car, everything turned black and was a green wire screen. And I was like, oh God, sit back down, boy. I don't why this?
So it's almost so you have to be in a certain bubble in order for everything
you have to stay well within the bubble in GT. Now it is, don't get me wrong, he was lurching around like a maniac, and gooning at other cars as he went by and things and sticking his head out the window. And, probably if you're playing it as a simulation, you would not be doing that. But if you've bought this to have a little bit of fun, you probably want to mess about with it and test it and push the limits. And the limits were a sphere around you, and that was about it. I think one thing I really want to see come from this is room scale. Is definitely room scale. My room's large enough. It's probably not tall enough, because there were a few times in Call of the Mountain when I played it stood up that as I reached for things, I punched the ceiling. It was like, oh God, yeah, of course. So I've had to play that mostly knelt or sat, which is obviously is a bit immersion breaking, and it's a shame. And I don't really want to unplug all the PS5, take it through to a different room, set it all up again, just so I can climb unimpeded without punching the ceiling. The room that the setup's in is still 7 foot tall or maybe higher, but it's relatively short for versus modern living. So
it's funny that you say this, because it seems like, based on the feedback you just gave, it seems like all three of the console manufacturers have like aspects to where like if they came together, they would make the complete VR experience, because like Xbox with the Kinect did that room scaling thing really well.
Yeah.
You know, Xbox with the Kinect did that room scaling thing. Like Mario Kart Live's home circuit and like the IPs that Nintendo has would be perfect for VR, and Sony has like the initiative behind it. Like Sony is the one who's like bringing a lot of the dual sense tech to it. So I'm like, if they'd all three work together, then we'd have like a premium VR experience. But separately, it seems like they're just like pieces to what we want in VR.
I've thought this before, and you make a salient point there. You know, Xbox had probably the best step, especially with the Xbox One and forcing everyone to have it, to glove-free interaction in the world with the Kinect. And certainly the Kinect One, I've been very vocal about as an early adopter of that. It was, I'm not even going to apologize, it was absolute garbage. And that's being kind. Absolute garbage. And you're talking to someone who redesigned and decorated this whole room
For the
lounge
Kinect, basically,
to give Kinect the best chance possible to be good, and it was still dreadful. That really killed, one of the things that really killed my relationship back in the day with Xbox 360. It was like, so I was a day one adopter of 360, I'm a day one adopter of Kinect, and Kinect, despite what they told me at E3 and all the things that I've been shown, is utter garbage.
Yeah.
But the second Kinect, individual fingers, the whole bag of tricks, fascinating, an incredible bit of kit, which they binned off. If they kept with it and actually been the first to do virtual reality, I was thinking this the other day, I was thinking, why didn't they do that? So you're right, you know, they've, in between all three of them, they've got the perfect, they've got the perfect synergy to create the ultimate headset, and not just the ultimate headset, but the ultimate experience within that. Although I still think you're going to need something in your hands, because going pew, pew, pew with your fingers in the air with the Kinect, certainly going to feel good not to be holding anything other than your hands, but you're not going to get that tactile interaction. So there's still work to do.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, am I enjoying it though? Despite the cost of entry, I am enjoying it. It's the cost of entry that prohibits me from saying it's a must buy.
Let me ask you this then. You know, you paid $550 for this. And, you know, at that point, you could have gotten like a real sizable Steam Deck. Do you wish you would have gone that route instead?
The way I mobile game, okay, the way I handheld game, the Vita is still more than enough for me. I've got access to a Switch and a couple of Switches, a Switch Lite and an OG launch Switch.
I was about to say, you can play all Vita games on it, all the Vita games on it, all the Game Boy games on it, plus Steam games.
I know, but it's a big, cumbersome looking thing that looks like something MacGyver or the A-Team knocked up with a gun to the head in a shed.
I think once you put it in your hands, you're going to feel different. I think it's one of those things to where, like, it's almost like when you pick it up for the first time, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. It's like, it's not as bad as it actually looks. And then you get used to it, you know?
Should anything that costs that much come with a thing that says this doesn't feel so bad?
I mean, at this point, PSVR2 is like that. It didn't feel so
you
bad.
know, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward again this weekend, obviously on completion of recording the fine multi-chart entering podcast that is the Unofficial Controller podcast. Once we've stuck a pin in it and it's done, I will be sinking back into it, hopefully uninterrupted, until I collapse on the floor in a virtual world.
I have a challenge for you. Watch a piece of media on it. I want to hear what that experience is like watching something like a TV show or a movie.
I don't even know how I'd go about doing that. I suppose I could stick a Blu-ray in it and watch that.
I think you can watch something streamed, you know, using your like stream media, like a Disney Plus show or something.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Again, I don't know what it is with me. I don't. When I want to watch a media streaming app, I use the TV for that.
Same here. And
I turn the PlayStation off.
But you'd be surprised. There are some, like, a sizable amount of people that use that PSVR as like a watchable experience, to where like it's almost like
prawn or
I mean, just different things like anime,
Okay.
like movies, different things like that. It's almost that cinematic experience to them to where they close off the rest of the world and they can just watch something like that. So I was curious to see how you would feel about watching a 30-minute show of that.
One of the big open goals that I thought of when PSVR1 launched, and certainly a massive open goal since PSVR2 was launched, is the fact that I like the idea that I can watch a film on the black screen. I did watch a couple of 3D movies in PSVR1 before I decided it was a bit of a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
But nice to have the option. I want to have virtual cinemas. Like, why can't I watch this in a festival field with a screen there in front of me? Like, I know it's distracting, but it would certainly be an interesting little distraction. Why can't I feel like I'm in a movie theater watching it and the screen's on the wall over there? Why can't I be floating in space? Why can't I be watching this in a packed auditorium full of 3D animated characters who are watching the film at the same time as me? Why can't I, it's just a black screen floating in the air that I don't necessarily see the point of, but I can understand why people would want it. If you're a kid, you ain't got a TV that's big and you want to have that big 100-inch plus screen right in front of you, I can see it. I'm also surprised no one's developed an app to allow you to do so with these headsets, but I wonder if it's walled off with not being able to get sign off on it, because you could watch any film in this environment and not all film providers will be happy with you watching one of their franchise films in a certain franchise cinema or whatever it is. I'm sure there's money behind this decision.
So you want it to be like where you're diving into the Pensieve from Harry Potter, to where you're like you dive in and the world around you is basically what you're watching, so to speak.
No. That's no. When you're in virtual cinema mode, it's just normally the screen floating in black. I'd rather put the headset on and find myself sat in a cinema.
Okay, I get it now.
With the screen in front of me. Mm-hmm. And that's always what I thought that mode would be, and it never was. And again, it's always felt like a really big missed opportunity to me. So I can watch a movie in this. Like, yeah, isn't it great? Yeah, it is, but how hard would it be for you to knock up a fake cinema or a television around it to contain it, or for it to be on the stage of a festival and I see people walking around in front and around me? That would
have you tried a sporting event like this? Because I'm like, some of those do have those like dedicated where you're sitting in a dedicated seat section, like in basketball, for instance. Like you can watch a Lakers game to where you're dedicated,
sat next to Jay-Z, and he's just sat next to a tripod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Really, it's exactly how it is.
No, I haven't. I was tempted. I think they did offer something similar for the World Cup, and PSVR was compatible with that. But no,
it feels like a hassle.
Again, with this one plug scenario and not having to root around. Again, PSVR 1.5 did come with the 4K HDR pass through. PSVR 1 just has 4K. I just bought a brand new PS4 Pro console to enjoy HDR, and then I bought the brand new PlayStation headset to enjoy VR, and then found they weren't really that compatible, which was disappointing. Again, early adopter. I guess I got what I deserved. Scum.
It's crazy. I'm interested to hear your thoughts in later episodes about like what you feel like PSVR after like a week, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, and such like that.
Yeah, I live in hope that it's not going to find its way into the box over the next 14 days, because that was one hell of a expensive experience. Probably could have flown to a foreign country and actually done something real world rewarding. Like working in an orphanage in Spain or something versus this. But I chose
going
this.
to the Monkey Kingdom.
Yeah, or going to the monkey. I chose this. And hopefully over the time I'll be rewarded. So far, I've been pleasantly surprised, but it's certainly not been the genre-defining piece of tech I hoped it would be. As again, an early adopter of PSVR 1, which, I did play and enjoy. So I would say, Seb, unless you have any more questions for me, that's the PSVR 2 review. Hopefully I did an eloquent job of helping people understand. Like I say, if you're on the fence or you're not sure and you have the disposable income, why not? You've bought worse. But But if, like a lot of us, you're struggling to pay the bills right now, is this worth getting in debt for? No, absolutely not. I'll be the first person to tell you when a system selling piece of software comes along or an experience is so good that it really requires leaving all cents at the door and getting yourself heavily indebted to get this headset. I'd be the first person to tell you. As you know, gamers, paid for by my own money, so therefore my opinion is probably worth more than a lot of people's. Just wait. If you get to have a go on a mates, play kayak, you have a great experience. It may leave you yearning to want to get one, but the problem with VR, unless you try it, you don't really know. And you have to try it to know. There needs to be more demo areas, Seb, I think.
George, I'm smelling that you sold out here, just like me in the Fur K experience, the Fur K Nation. I'm smelling that Kayak may have bought you. They may have bought you.
The best thing is, they haven't, and that's how good that is. Now I daren't mention it again now because it sounds like I've been bought off, and I want people to legitimately know.
I'm joking, of course.
I know you are, but I just want people to know that I didn't expect that random purchase I made to have something new that I'd never played before on my headset other than Horizon. Would be as good as it was.
But people at Kayak, we are available to be bought out. Send us a number. Like Fur K has shown that we do have a number.
One thing I would say is if you are anything to do with Kayak VR, I would love to have a conversation with you because, again, you can take this for free. Use that same idea to make a dinghy sailing game, pulling on the ropes, using the tiller, looking up at the wind direction on top of the mast. Give me some islands to sail around. Give me different boats to try out, larger yachts, smaller yachts, racing dinghies, small racing dinghies. And then give me an open world sea, an infinite sea.
Goodness.
That
you just described Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones VR.
I don't want any cannon firing, Seth. I don't want any piracy. I just want their Kayak's take on sailing. I think that would be gangbuster numbers. I think anything that Ubisoft touch with a VR moniker on it. Saying that, I humbly apologize, Ubisoft, because you did bring us Star Trek Bridge Crew VR, which was
a good game,
an absolutely great game. In VR early days, I poured out. I platinumed that. This is how good that was. I platinumed that.
I'm gonna be real with you. Like we were talking crazy about them, but they seem like the ideal developers for VR. Like if they wanted to move half of their infrastructure to just being a VR system, they would be perfect for it.
Yeah, unfortunately, for every Star Trek VR Bridge Crew we got, we also got Eagle Flight, which was
we did. Yeah, awful. But I mean, they got so many IPs that I feel like would be 1v1 for VR. Like if they wanted to do a Skull and Bones kind of scenario for VR, that seems more playable than a lot of things we've gotten in VR. Like Rayman a Rayman VR experience would probably be at least decent.
That'd be cool. Astrobot copy, but
exactly.
It would work.
Exactly. And then the Rabbids plus Mario game VR would be a pretty cool experience, I think. They, to me, their IPs lend themselves to being very VR friendly. I'm like, what you're doing right now for regular gaming isn't working. No, absolutely. You haven't made a Game of the Year contender for as long as we can remember. I'm like, that might be a good way to pivot and become something become a very strong contender in a very specific niche,
Well, I did think at the time when I played Star Trek Bridge Crew, I thought you could roll this out to so many other ideas. Like you could have a Lancaster bomber flying game. You got one person the pilot, one person the navigator, one person the bomb aimer, and the other people are in the gun waist and rear gun positions. You could do B-17, you could do Lancaster, you could do the tank game. You could do a submarine game where you all adopt different positions around the submarine. Imagine PSVR2 where you're looking down through the corridor and you see your mate loading you're on the periscope, you put it away, and then you look down the corridor through a door and you see your mate loading the torpedo. So many good things that could be done that they just aren't doing. And I'd say that would be a great use of VR.
I'm gonna be real with you. Watch Dogs seems like it'd be the perfect franchise for VR. Like the way the tech works and such like that. You of course strip it down, make it a very single player, like smaller focused experience. But like the way you can control like the tech around you and turn it on and off.
The
and
only
things
way,
like that.
again, going back to what I said before, what you think might be a good fit on a flat screen to VR. If they were to do a Watch Dogs game, you would have to be a hacker in a dingy basement. Using maybe the CIA have found out what you're up to and you've got 60 minutes to thwart their entry to your place or finding you by battling them on the internet to their sort of electronic searches for you, for hacking into the local CCTV to see where the vehicle stockade is on its way to hunt you down, and you're setting off cameras or popping up bollards to trip them up, but not in a way that you would be out and about in San Francisco or anything like that. I think that would be a no-go. I think
No.
Imagine you've got to be clever with it.
Yeah, imagine if you were like the behind the chair like hacker, and like the key is like you have to figure out how to get your people to their objectives and such like that, and like manipulate the world around you to get people to their objectives, as well as like you're in a mobile vehicle, so where you always feel like you're slightly moving but you're sitting down, and like you have to also probably figure out like how to keep the law from like getting to you as well. I'm like, it feels like that would be a better use of the Watch Dogs IP than just being a open world generic GTA clone that didn't quite live up to GTA.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I could speak for hours about what I would love to see in virtual reality, but we're kind of just going to have to wait.
Yeah,
someone who's bored of waiting, Seb, and a man you shouldn't make wait. It's time for a peek at what we affectionately call Stingray's Boot. What's nestled between some counterfeit nappies and a dodgy copy of Battlefriend All this week. These are the new release highlights for the week February 27th to March 5th, 2023. Listeners, these are out in digital, physical, or will be by the time this podcast in your feed, but could be region dependent. Now, I don't know how you're seeing him, but I'm seeing him. He literally, everything around me turned to a Tron-style environment, including you, Seb. And he's flown in here like Job from Lawnmower Man. He's on the edge of becoming a god of the virtual world. And he's basically pointing at me in a rather basic 90s CGI way. And he's shaking his fist. How do you see the Ray today?
Have you watched the movie Kazam before? With Shaq being a genie?
I'm aware of it, but I've never seen this gem.
Okay. So imagine a genie outfit, and you just have my my disproportionate like bowling pin Ray, and he's just in a genie outfit today. That's pretty much it.
To be honest, disproportionate bowling pin Ray would probably fit quite well in a genie lamp, so it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can't really tell he's disproportionate.
It's kind of morphed his body, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's not keep the Ray hanging around. First out of the boot, we've got
Neopolis.
Anemopolis, Chapter 1 on the PC, February 27th. The most relaxing horror game you'll ever play. Anemopolis exists in the uncanny valley of American architecture. Endless carpeted floors and lonely malls. Perfect VR. Escape for your life and enjoy the scenery.
That might be the only like horror game I'd play.
VR horror is pretty intense experience, friend.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Next up, we have Dungeons of Ether, and it comes out in February 28th for PC. Delve into Dungeons of Ether at a turn-based dungeon crawler set in the Rival of Ether universe. I didn't know there was a universe. Control 4 new heroes as they uncover the mysteries of Julesvale.
Yeah, I would say
Cavern. Yeah, in the story mode, or test your mettle in the grueling, challenging dungeons.
I'm going to rock the boat. Here's my mummy coming at you. It's Fern Bus Coach Simulator. The only thing letting it down is the iconic Iveco bus lineup, but I'm sure they're going to flesh that out as it comes along. It's the PS5 and Xbox Series X, February 28th. The world of coach drivers awaits you. Drive along motorways and country roads to the bus stations in over 40 cities in Germany. Thanks to the cooperation of Flixbus and true to the original MAN buses, we will experience the game world in a realistic way. No brainer. That would also make a great VR game. You literally sat in a coach. Makes sense, doesn't it?
You love a good simulator, don't you?
Seated simulators work well for the VR, and simulators, if they're done well, I don't mind them. I think they're quite
I was like, you've ran a factory, you've ran a motorsport team. You love a good simulator, don't you?
I shouldn't really, but I do.
I understand.
I'm from the generation that 16-bit home computing and 8-bit home computing generation, where simulators made up a vast bulk of the games that we played. Grand Prix racing or flight sims. If you wanted a pretty decent AAA game, they were the ones you had to go for. Maybe the ground was prepared for me.
If this was a simulation, but like bus game to where I ran the night bus from Harry Potter, and I would be all over it. But a regular bus, not for me.
Again, if you're going to do a VR game, if you made the night bus simulator.
Oh, that would be really cool.
Would be really cool. With that little head floating around on the rearview mirror.
Yeah. I think his name was Ernie.
Ernie. Ernie, man. That would be absolute fire. What's next?
Rightmost coming at you at PC Switch at February 28th. A relaxing puzzle game where you create music by solving mazes, travel from planet to planet, and discover new music. Jam on top of the music from the planet with a great selection of 20 plus fun unlockable musical toys.
Interesting. And last but not least, I would imagine this is your mummy. It's Scars Above, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, and PS4. I've only come to that conclusion by deduction, and this being the only thing left. February 28th, Scars Above is a challenging sci-fi third-person adventure action shooter, combining the rewarding feel of overcoming difficulty with a compelling and intricate story set in a mysterious alien world to explore. This is Returnal, multi-format. Enjoy it, embrace it. From what I understand so far, it looks to be a pretty good game and should be received reasonably well. I predict 7s, if I'm being honest.
You're being high. You're being generous. I think with Returnal coming out and everything, like they have Housemarque to compare it to, I think that's a little steep, but I hope for the best for that studio.
Okay. Good luck with that.
I looked at the trailer and I was like, I don't, it's giving me so many of Returnal vibes without some of the nuances of Returnal, but I like the way some of the aspects look. It's just like, you gotta that Returnal like set that bar for what like a space adventure shooter can be like, especially if you have like any sort of like mysterious element and like alien elements to it. It's a high bar now.
Do I agree with you? Like the aesthetic of Returnal, the story of Returnal. I just think that the gameplay of Returnal was a bar to entry to a lot of casual players. And early in the PS5's life, I think a lot of people were sort of hungry for a game, and Returnal came along. And, screenshots are one thing, but actually playing it, that was one demanding game. And I think
rough. It's rough. It'll kick your teeth down your throat. I mean, I think Stars Above, it will be a lighter, more massive 50 type of experience to where like a lot of people will kind of like feel the combat, but not like brutally get the combat kicked down the throat or anything like that. But if I had to choose out of these games, I'd try Stars Above, but like Scars Above. But like at this point, I'm like, none of these seem like they're going to set the world on fire by any means.
No, unfortunately not. Well, unless you get behind the multi-mega million selling franchise, which is Fernbus Coach Simulator. Scars Above would probably be my mummy too. Before we let him slip away back into the virtual Tron-like world that he crawled out from, probably looks like more like CFAX, if I'm being honest with you. He looks like the character from Bamboozle. We won't know what that is, Seb, but to a certain age demographic in the UK, that's what gaming really was. What's your VHS take home from Ray's boot this week?
You know, Ray kind of like put me up to this. So there's a great American classic movie by the name of Good Burger. Have you ever seen this movie?
I don't think I have.
Okay, Good Burger, the home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order? Like the UK listeners may not know what Good Burger is, but there's a team of actors by the name of Keenan and Kale.
I've seen Good Burger.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a VHS Nickelodeon classic movie, and I think The Good Burger is probably going to be my like boot selection this week.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick Titanic, mainly because it's got its anniversary this year, but also because Enigmatic Productions, very loyal partners of the show with Johan and Harvey Retro at the wheel. They're back on the tube, and they're doing their watch throughs. And this is one of them, and must encourage everybody to go check out their channel. It's absolutely
go
amazing.
check them out.
Big supporters of the show. And, you know, if you're not following them on YouTube, I have to ask you, are you even a human? Do you even YouTube, bro?
What are you doing?
I know. What's wrong with these people? If you haven't watched all their content by next week, I'm going to poke both your eyes out because you don't deserve them.
Yeah, we'll give you some fake aesthetic ones, though, because we don't want you to have 2 eye patches, though.
No, they're going full eye patch.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm not even bothered. I think they're even going to go the dark glasses Stevie Wonder route, so I'm going to force on them.
I tried to help y'all, everyone. I tried to help y'all. But yeah, go check out their content. It's great. And the Titanic is a classic. I'm not a fan of the Titanic, but, you know, it is a classic movie for a reason.
Absolutely. I was going to go down the VR road again, but I think that's slightly unnecessary. With that said, Ray has slipped away. All that's left on the floor is one of those
underwear.
Yeah,
the way is underwear.
That's what you see.
That's what I see. Yeah,
I saw one of those really massive 90s virtual reality headsets that you see people wearing in nostalgic pieces of film. The ones with the yellow visor on the front of it that probably rendered things in like 4 frames per second and pretty hideous blocky 3D. Now, that is a vomit comet. PSVR2, luckily not. Everybody who knows the way the show works knows that there's really only one thing left for us to discuss, Seb, and it's what are you hoping to play?
You know, I'm going to polish off Hogwarts Legacy this week. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make the commitment. I'm gonna try to polish off Hogwarts Legacy. And then, you know, Atomic Heart might fall off the wayside, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think I'm going to see that one through. So I think it's just going to be that. And I think I'm going to do for the Single Player Experience podcast, and in light of the Suicide Squad news, I think I'm going to do a replay through of Arkham City. Because after looking at after what's up?
I would, you know, if you want to enjoy what Suicide Squad has to offer, you need to stick well away from their 3 good games because
no, that's my point. I need a palate cleanser because I'm like, Suicide Squad looks like a bag of dog poo that someone lit on fire and threw out in front of someone's front lawn. I need a palate.
Graphically, it looks impressive. What made me balk up in my own hands is that King Shark navigating through the level, like. All I saw was basically Fortnite, where the characters were wearing DC skins.
Oh, and none of the characters actually look like they bring their own unique things to the table. They all look like they just shoot guns and like have one special move. Like none of them feel like they're their own unique characters, which is a shame because like it's really good, strong performances. I almost wish this was an animated movie because DC does really good animated movies. But as a game, I think my biggest disappointment is like, this is Rocksteady. I expect better from them. Like I expect them to do great single player experiences. And it feels like they chased a trend that was like starting to hit its high about 7 years ago.
Listen, whether it's rumor or not, but from my understanding of the rumor mill, we don't do rumors and we don't do leaks. It's an old song of mine from the UCB back in the day, but I almost think that the Superman game that they were initially allegedly were struggling with would actually have been better received than this.
I would have loved that. Absolutely love that. Yeah, and you have Metropolis already there. I don't really care. I want someone to try it. I'm like, don't be a coward, people. Just try to do Superman. And at this point, I'm like, Rocksteady had a like a perfected algorithm of like single player gameness to where they could have put out anything under that Batman Arkham skin. They could have put out a Green Arrow game, and I would have bought it day one because it was them that did it, and they are golden at single player games. Like this is just fodder. This strikes to me as something that's going to be dead on arrival in about a year.
I know, and they've wasted 10 years. Even, Green Arrow, probably a bit too similar to Batman straight off the gates. But
I mean, that's sort of the appeal to it. He's different enough, but it's similar to where like people who want that controls still get that controls. You know,
to be honest, if they'd given us a Flash game, if they couldn't get Superman working, fair enough. But if they'd given us Flash over Green Arrow, I think he's slightly more bankable.
For sure.
And it would have been enough, because I think if they'd done Green Arrow, it would have been like, oh, look, they just reskinned Batman. Simple. He fights the same. He stands on rooftops looking broody. Same character, really. He's a billionaire in his daytime. Same character, really. It would have been easy for them to slate it. But if we'd have got Star City and Barry Allen, or, Jay Garrick or whatever, I don't even care.
I'm impressed with your DC knowledge here.
It's the better of the franchises, if I'm being honest with you.
Out of Marvel?
By a long way.
Oh. You're throwing out some shots now.
Marvel's enjoyable, but it's more like popcorn. DC's enjoyable, it's more like a thoroughly good read.
Are we talking about comics, or are we talking about like live action stuff?
The whole thing, from my take of it, really.
Oh, we need to have an episode dedicated on this. Just a sidebar episode.
Whether it was my early exposure to a Superman and Friends annual as a kid, but, there was some, even as a 4 or 5-year-old boy, it was Superman on the front, but it was the Flash storyline inside that really, really rocked me to the core, to be honest. I need to try and find that annual, but Flash was doing stuff with time travel and, able to be anywhere at any point in time. And as I read this as a 4 or 5-year-old, I was like,
he's a god among men.
He literally, Superman could punch him in the face and that would be game over, really. But, his ability to weave around as quick as he does, the ability to move time forward and backwards, the ability to move time and backwards to fall through different dimensions and versions of Earth, alternate Earth, this, that, and the other, has always been fascinating to me. I really loved series 1 of The Flash. I felt like after that, it was a bit of a case of diminishing returns, but I feel like as a superhero series, that first series nailed it.
Okay. So is the upcoming Flash movie your most anticipated movie for the rest of the year?
No.
Okay.
I think it could be good, but based on what Hollywood is popping out at the moment,
not really.
It's gonna be garbage, mate. Sorry, it's gonna be derivative. It's gonna be trying to prove points. There's gonna be, I wish movies could just tell a story and not feel the need to be so inclusive with everything all the time, to the point where that's all that gets rammed down your throat. Like, I know that human society is trash, but I don't go to the cinema necessarily to be taught about female representation. I just want to go watch a movie.
I feel you. I think there's a time and place for it, depending on what the story is. So
if it's in line with the story being told, I think what a wonderful way to do it. But if it feels crowbarred into the story just for social justice credits, I kind of think it's not worth it. In 20 years' time, when this movie's looked back on, everyone will see it for exactly what it is. And it's a glorified money pig trying to masquerade in a Trojan horse of social justice. And I just think, what a waste of a franchise.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of depends. I wonder what the story is. If the story lends itself to having that message and they tell that story well, I'm more all for it. But
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
But like I say, I don't like Trojan horse movies.
I understand. I almost feel like that with any movie that's not a Christmas movie. I'm like, I don't want a message per se. If I'm like, just give me the movie, unless you're a Christmas movie or unless you're like intended to like, hey, this movie is supposed to be a mentality changer in general. So
yes. Yes. It just seems a waste, as some of cinema's greatest, that they really put their neck on the line. They really go out there from an artistic point of view, from a directorial point of view, from a cinematography point of view. That style of cinema seems to be a bit of a relic.
Yeah.
This is a video game podcast. What are we doing?
Yeah, I was about to say we're a podcast within a podcast, but before, I have a question for you, George. What do you hope this week?
Just some more VR, some Hogwarts, and that's probably me happy. I downloaded, oh, look at me, Legend of Dragoon on the PS Store. I'll have a slice of that, he says. Downloaded it ready, just in time to find out it's a broken mess. Soft locks everywhere, apparently, so I'm going to delete that and wait for a patch. Oh, hot news. Should have put it in the news, really, but for all that we knock Ubisoft, as you know, PS4 version of Syndicate was nice. And obviously, backwards compatible PS5, you'd think Syndicate would be a nice place to play that game. Well, fortunately, on launch, for whatever issue, there's a coding issue. PS5 couldn't render the buildings. It couldn't do this, that, and the other, and it was flicking in and out. Ubisoft released a patch to make sure that runs smoothly on PS5 in shock news in 2023. I have to applaud them for that. Incredible.
They got one guy on that, probably named Daryl, and he was just locked in the basement. They were like, "Hey, Daryl, you fix this," and he was just like, "I want to see my family." They were like, "Fix this first."
Fix this first. Like weeks in, it's still not done. He's like, my kid should be at school. Like, great first day. I was there with him, but you weren't, Daryl. Now pull your finger out your backside and get this Syndicate patch done.
Yes, we need this for all 10 people who want to play this game.
Exactly. They're bringing out Skull and Bones for probably one person on the planet right now. He's probably still playing Black Flag on his PS3. But they'll dedicate thousands of people to, but they just dedicate Daryl to the Syndicate patch. They're going to help a brother out.
Exactly. He's like, Daryl, do you really want these 10 people to be disappointed? Daryl's like, I really don't, but I also want to go home to my family. And they're like, Daryl, one thing at a time, man. One thing at a time.
Literally, Daryl, one thing at a time. And Syndicate, that was the thing that derailed me from my Assassin's Creed playthrough from memory. It was just, I'm sure there's a gem of a good game in there, but it was just too derivative by the end of it for me to enjoy it. I think I'd like to go back to it because I did appreciate his take on London. Although coming off the back of Unity, straight off the back of Unity, God, it looked awful. It looked awful. And it followed Unity, so why didn't it look as good? But there's something about that washed out HDR bleach in Unity that still looks great to this day. And the character models and cloths and everything just look 10 times better than what Syndicate felt like I was playing Assassin's Creed 3 all over again.
I think I'm done with Assassin's Creed. If I'm being honest with you, I think I prefer the open world RPG Assassin's Creed games, but I hate the Assassin's Creed elements of those games. Like, I do not want to learn anything about any of the
thing is, we go forward and we go back in time.
I don't care about any of that.
And we still don't really know anymore. Like, what's the actual end game of this story, guys? Because I don't think
that's
you
my
even
point.
know.
That's my point. I do not I'm a sci-fi lover. I love a good story. I'm like, but they don't actually give a good story. They just basically send you from point A to point B and put you in a different time zone and said, go play around in this. And I'm like, give me a really concise story, because you have an interesting lore. You have an interesting, original idea here. You just never executed on it. You haloed this whole series, basically.
Savage, but probably true.
I'm dropping truth bombs this morning.
Wow. Okay. Well, on that note, all I want to play is some more PSVR. I'd imagine, really, unless you've got any more to share. Seb, let them know where they can find you outside of the UCP.
Outside of the UCP, you can find me at the Single Player Experience Podcast, the premier podcast for single player gamers to find out about good single player games to play. We got tons of reviews coming up. Tons. I'm also going to be at PAX. So if you're going to be in Boston at the PAX show, hit your boy up. I'll always be glad to talk to another UCP fan out there. So hit me up if you're going to be at that show. I'll be at some other shows later this year as well. So if you see me on the streets, don't feel shy. Say hi to your boy. But all that said, yeah, you can see me there. And right now, you can see me at your local fast food eatery where I'm going to be ordering all the breakfast because your boy is hungry. George, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on the UCP. They can find me on the Discord, where I'm going to be starting a very strong and heavy campaign to get Seb to adopt the UCP branding logo for his. Yeah, you heard me right.
Mm-hmm.
I want people in the Discord. I want them manipulating you in every way possible. I want votes. I want shouts. I want basic call outs until you're wearing the UCP uniform. It's like a McDonald's. You've got to wear it. So you're going to have a warning from your supervisor.
You know, the crazy thing is, it's like, I like the logo. It's just, I'm a part of so much. I'm like, I don't want to confuse people, but I do love the logo.
Confuse them.
Yeah, I confuse them. They're just going to be like, what happened?
Why are you turned into a baby?
Exactly. Exactly.
You need a new username just for the UCP army.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't have to send, I don't know. I don't need to send the gaming gram round to do a hit on you.
Yeah. You know, like maybe some of the lost kids will come back and protect me.
Mikey Wrestling is dressed up as a cupboard and he's hanging around in your background waiting for you to actually change this logo. Because at a moment's notice, a whisper from me, he's going to basically drop that cupboard disguise and DDT you through a flaming table numerous times.
The crazy thing is, me and him have a match scheduled. So I'm like, that would just be ambushing us before our dedicated match.
Like a true pro wrestler would do.
Exactly.
Wonderful. One last thing before we dive off. Obviously, we've got OLL coming up. There's a show this week. If you're listening to this next week or whatever, they've got a pre-show coming up in Norwich. If you're listening to this, you've already missed it. But if you're on the Discord, no doubt you'll be aware of it. And what I would say is we've got the big show coming up there. It's like a gaming con, geek con, comic con, all mashed into one. There'll be cosplay, all sorts of great stuff. But most importantly, if you want to virtually meet Seb and Bobby, they'll be there on the screen. Me and RGT will be doing live hosting duties in the UK. So the American office is going to join us virtually. And the US office is going to be, the UK office is going to be loud and proud and in charge. If you're listening, if you're from another country and you fancy coming across, notably Germany or somewhere like that, you know, tickets are relatively cheap for flights at the moment. But I would definitely, hotels are going quick. And if you're coming from another country, you definitely need somewhere to bed down for the evening. So make sure you get your tickets bought, make sure you get your rooms booked, and make sure German listeners single you out right now. Such a groundswell of you. Get on the Discord. Okay, I will create a German-only section for you to speak in your mother tongue where you can just exist on there. Come join the party. Don't just think, because although you listen to the show in English, I presume you understand the show in English, and therefore you can speak in English, but I will generate a whole German-only area for you. So get yourself down there. We very much appreciate your listens, and we're literally an hour and a half flight away from you coming to meet us in person. We're very grateful to all of you for listening across the world, and we will extend
Hold on, George. Before we go, I have a challenge that I would like to lay out in the pro wrestling style of things. Mikey Wrestling, Roast Space Monk, Monkery, Babs, Fat Zangief. You're here in our fantasy league. I need you to start picking up some games because I'm about to lay the smack down on all of you. I am the gatekeeper for this. If you want to join us next year for our fantasy league, then you're going to have to come to me. Yours truly. I'm the gatekeeper right now. And now, they got me projected at first place. And it's not even close. Like, by a landslide. The whole thing has me projected to just kick everyone's teeth down their throat. So if you're listening right now, I'm laying down the gauntlet right now. If you feel like you're coming for the king, you best not miss. In other words, come correct or bow down, because I'm coming for each one of you.
Wow. I don't know how I would have done that promo. Probably in one of the more bizarre ways that I do my own thing. But making me very unique in every way possible. But if that didn't put the living fear of God in you, and to be honest, the glittering prize of appearing on this show, the #1 multi-format gaming show across many different continents. Not
in all of
continents.
podcasts.
In all of podcasts. Yeah. I mean, we're having such a good run of it lately in the charts. Again, we must thank every single one of you. And if every single one of you listening today got one other person to download, we would be the all-seeing eye of podcasts. And I don't like to think what would happen to the Ray if he got that power. I can't wait.
By the way, everyone, I'm gonna beat these Joe Smos without having Breath of the Wild on my roster, without having Spider-Man on my roster, without having Starfield on my roster, or without having Resident Evil on my roster. So I handicapped myself by not picking the projected big four of the whole entire year, and I'm still gonna lay the smacker down on all of them. Come bring it, everyone. Bring it. I want you to bring the fight to me. I'm Thanos here.
No, you're dangerous. You're like Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man. I feel like I'm gonna.
That's a good reference. That's a good.
I feel like I'm gonna have to freeze you down for 20 years until you learn some politeness and society actually conforms to some level of decency, where swear words are a distant memory, and you get fined for every blasphemous word you say.
No, we go by Dredd rules around these parts.
Dredd rules.
Yeah, listen, Judge Dredd.
Before things. Before things descend into any more sort of visceral nastiness, I would say that's all we have time for this week. Listeners, as always, thank you for your time. We look forward to the pleasure of speaking to you again next week. Until then, happy gaming. And remember, there's nothing wrong with being given the unofficial controller. It's what you do that counts. See you, Seb.
Bye.